Hi, Chris. How are you?
Good. How are you? I love
Good,
the banner
good.
in the back.
That's awesome. Great minds think alike.
Oh
Fantastic.
man, good to see
Happy
you.
Friday.
Sorry about the all of the rescheduling, but things are more back to normal now, so it's all good.
Okay, I'm glad to. Hope you're feeling better.
Yeah. No, I am. I'm good. I'm good. So should we just go ahead and jump right in?
Yes, of course. Let's
All
do it.
right. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization and what you're passionate about?
Yeah, sounds good. So, Chris, first of all, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm Sandeep Kibey. I'm a first-line supervisor in development at Exxon-Mobil in Houston, Texas. I joined the company back in 2007. Grew up in a middle-class family in India, and growing up, my most vivid memory of childhood education is studying for my math test in candlelight due to rolling blackouts and lack of reliable, affordable energy. Right. So life has really come full circle for here at
Wow.
ExxonMobil. Right.
Very
So
cool.
yeah. So if you talk about purpose, I now work towards energizing humanity, which is all about providing reliable, affordable energy to our society while we preserve our planet's climate, so that one day no kid in any part of the world will need to study in candlelight ever again. Now, role at ExxonMobil, I work in the lab. I serve a team of about 14 outstanding lab professionals who are developing lab capabilities for our high value, high impact, high value assets who develop these high impact technologies for our business units. And so innovation is a focus area for us in the lab. That's how we support the business. That's how we discover, develop, and then deploy technologies that bring value to the corporation. And over the past 1.5 years, we have been on this innovation journey in the lab, promoting innovation, transforming our innovation culture, working very hard to overcome barriers that you see in these large organizations,
Oh
and
yeah.
we're making significant progress. So I'm excited about that.
That's fantastic. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some of the like one of the challenges that you've had and how you overcame it? Because I'd love to hear. I mean, like I said, I guess I told you before, like my audience is corporate innovators and startup founders, and one of the biggest problems that corporate innovators have is being able to move sort of innovative products and services to the organization, actually get them from sort of concept to product. And I'm curious to know, about your successes in that space.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in general, I think we both agree that large organizations can struggle to sustain a culture of innovation. So let me just give you some context first, because I'm going to give you examples from the oil and gas industry, so let's take a polar opposite industry, entertainment, for example. Consider Netflix, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you look at Netflix and their culture deck, etc., they stayed upfront that they are a creative business, not a safety critical business. And I love the clarity around that because things, Andrew Hastings has talked about this at Stanford, several other forums, TED Talk, all that good stuff. Now, in the oil and gas industry where I work, ours is a safety critical business. So safety is a core value for us. And it's really critical to make sure that our operations are executed safely. And the same goes for the lab. Safety is a core value for us. Safety is non-negotiable. We want to make sure that everything that we do in the lab, we maintain laser sharp focus on safety. The challenge is some of that risk averse mindset then carries over into the innovation space. So beyond operations integrity, now in the innovation space on research, we have some of that risk averseness coming into play. And sometimes we can be too risk averse in our research in the lab. So there are three key barriers that we have identified, at least in our space, that we are working on. First is our metric for what is an innovative idea can be too narrow or restrictive. We self-censor. We do that all the time.
Yep.
Second is our focus on processes that can stifle innovation. And I think the biggest one, the third one, that in my mind is the biggest one, is the fear of failure.
Mm.
And that is a key barrier to innovation.
Yeah, well, I find that that's the fear of failure is huge and it's everywhere, right?
Right.
I mean, and that's one of the things that differentiates sort of startups from sort of corporates, because corporates are like everything's going well, right? They're making money,
Yes.
everything's running smoothly, and then you go in and try and insert innovation, or you try and insert exploration into an exploitation business, right? And it doesn't work, right? So whereas the startup business is almost all exploration, right? So they're still trying to find their feet. They're trying to figure out where to go. So how do you introduce that in there without sort of endangering? Because it's not just fear of failure, but it's just fear of doing something other than what's already working.
Right. And so similar to startups, I think it is all about value creation at the end of the day. That's where it is. So if in our case, I mean, so let's talk a little bit about our value additive role, and that's how, and then we can kind of move to the fear of failure. So the first part is basically, within ExxonMobil, the lab towards experimental programs. So we have research company where our PhD researchers toward these cutting edge research programs, which are of value to our business units. So there is a direct line of sight there, and the experimental part of it is what's performed in our lab, where appropriate, and as necessary, cookie cutter stuff that is mature that can be farmed out to third party labs as well. Now, for the lab, it is all about the value creation advantage. As you said earlier, it's like one way to look at it is basically we do that by developing lab capabilities that support the development of innovative technologies. That's where really that value creation is. Now, our business units have a role to play in that as well, because value claiming occurs once that technology goes out in the field, it gets deployed by the business units. And our business units know best what the right asset is, what the right opportunity is to deploy a particular technology. Own that risk out in the field, the eventual risk of, say, trying out something that is new, unproven, etc. So it is a true partnership in that innovation value chain. Now, we're always striving to be at our cost quality frontier, so that to achieve the best trade-offs between the cost and the and for us, at least in the lab, our focus is not to be the low-cost lab capability provider to our business units. Our business units have the ability to go to a third-party lab for testing needs where it makes sense. So stuff that is mature, cookie cutter, like I said earlier, that's best farmed out to third-party labs. So we don't need to do that in-house. But I think where our unique value additive role comes in that differentiated work product. And it's a little tricky in the sense that you still have to identify in your innovation space, what is that differentiated work product? So we work with our business units, we work with our researchers as partners. The relationship is not transactional. It is not about, hey, you gave me a scope and I'm going to and then I'm going to throw over the outcome to you and you decide what to do with it and how to use that to make a business decision. We understand the needs of our business units. We develop industry-leading capabilities that are focused on those high-value core assets for the corporation, that are tied to our portfolio. So our focus then is on reducing friction between for our researchers, the business units, provide them agile, right-sized solutions that third-party labs cannot provide. And that's where our unique value additive role comes in.
Right. So it sounds like does the business unit drive the innovation, or does it ever happen in the other direction where you guys are experimenting and you're seeing some new things and then you have to find the business unit to actually move that into?
Right. Yeah. So both can happen. It is not so much a technology of an application. It's mostly the other way around, where the business units, we talk to our business units and try to find out what are some of their pain points. What are the key business needs, which are the most impactful, highest value opportunities, and based on that, curate those research ideas. We do an internal valuation, and there is obviously a cutoff, and everything above the line makes it into the research portfolio, and everything below we say, okay, until it becomes an attractive opportunity, well, we're just going to put that on the side.
Okay, so go ahead.
In that sense.
But you have had situations where the lab has sort of generated something that's not specifically business unit independent. I mean, what happens to those ideas?
Yeah, so absolutely. So this has happened in the past where either because of the lack of agility, maybe initially we had strong alignment in terms of what needed to be done, and so we started pursuing that. But then, either the business the climate changed, the opportunity changed, the business environment changed, and that need basically no longer existed. And so it has happened in the past where sometimes programs have continued way too long. And that's where that pivoting comes in, is basically you gotta know when a particular opportunity is no longer as valuable as it was considered at the beginning, for example. There are times in the past when we have not done a good job of stopping our work on a timely basis and pivoting to the next best alternative or the next most attractive opportunity.
Right. So are you saying that it basically doesn't move forward unless there's sort of like a near-term value proposition? Or do you ever get into a situation where there's a product that you've developed, it's really cool, but you don't really quite see the value yet?
Right.
Like, what happens to those?
Yeah, so the former is more likely, in the sense that, if we tend not to pursue one because of resource constraint, and because obviously, we are in this business environment where the focus is on high grading our opportunities. So we don't necessarily pursue those opportunities that do not have a clear line of sight.
Right.
So
okay.
It's rarely a situation where we have a product that is in search of an application or a technology.
Right. So it's more of so you could argue that's sort of incremental, right? Are you also looking at disruptive, like things that are totally out of the box?
Yes.
That have nothing to do with, okay.
Absolutely. So again, like basically, and that's where one of the things about the focus on value comes in, and the type of opportunities that we have. Historically, what we used to self-censor good ideas. So let's talk about incremental versus disruptive. So about a year ago, we took a step back at our innovation portfolio in the lab, and we knew that this amount of innovation was going on, right? Some ideas were big, some ideas were small, others maybe in between, some were more incremental, etc. So we decided to take a measured look at our portfolio. What innovation space are we playing in? What's unique? What's value additive role that the lab can play in the areas that we are already working on? And what differentiates us from our labs, for example? So we identified 3 innovation categories in the lab. And these are well known. This is nothing profound, but it makes a huge difference in terms of how then we balance our innovation portfolio. So core ideas, which is more about optimizing existing test capabilities. Adjacent ones, where we are repurposing existing capability for a different business need, and something that is transformational, something that is disruptive. That is the most recognized form of innovation. We always talk about it, designing, building something new that doesn't exist yet. And what we did is we classified each innovation example or each innovation project that we had into one of these. And the key there was to recognize that each type of innovation can deliver value. Once that was understood, people really began to bring forward innovative ideas in all 3 spaces: core, adjacent, transformational. Some of that fear kind of started subsiding, because in the past we would simply self-censor ourselves on core or adjacent innovation ideas, and we would focus exclusively on transformational, which is great, because that's where really the value creation, maximum value maximization comes in. But we still do that now to maximize value, for sure. But we also recognize that core and adjacent ideas are equally important, and you need a balance between these 3 categories. You can't have a portfolio that is so overly biased towards high risk, high reward opportunities that you really don't have a lot that you can deliver. Time, you still need some mainstay core opportunities in order to continue to drive some efficiency improvements and continue to drive that base business.
Oh yeah, no, that's absolutely essential, and I completely understand that. The only question is that, do the transformational ideas ever get worked on, right? Because it's always the core, adjacent, transformational priority list, right? So you go, well, how do we get people to actually work on some of these transformational ideas, especially if some of them are almost a threat to the original exploitative business?
That's right. Yeah. So we absolutely. So there is a certain percentage of ideas that are high risk, high reward that we deliberately pursue. Some of them are tremendous. I mean, so won't go into some of the proprietary details here, but in the drilling space, for example, I mean, we have been working on some technologies that don't exist today. Don't know how to drill those wells. Roll those wells in those assets in order to realize value, simply because there's no technology out there. Because these assets are such an integral part of our core part of our portfolio, that's where the eventual value realization is. We have been working on those technologies, significant investment, and yes, so they do get worked. Some of them pan out. Them don't. And that's where that fear of failure that we were talking about earlier comes in. is that people don't necessarily feel comfortable about doing that. And I can share a personal story from leadership journey about fear of failure and how that can play out.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, I was leading a cross-company effort, which was about evaluating a very promising technology, one that you referred to, high risk, high reward trial. High effort, high visibility effort, millions of dollars involved in it. The objective was to collect meaningful data that informed us about the performance of that technology. So we did the field trial, went out, tried out the technology, felt really good about the field trial. And at the end of the field trial, we had a new hire with less than 3 months of experience who was tasked with post-processing that data from the field. And he determined that the data was not conclusive. So the way the field test was set up was faulty. In essence, the trial had failed.
Oh, no.
So, and our effort. So I reacted very defensively. I defended the setup, I defended the data, told the new hire that post-processing was like incorrect. They should go back, they should rework it. But as we looked more closely, I realized that the new hire was right, that the data was indeed inconclusive. And our setup was indeed not geared to collect the most meaningful data. So I went back as to my colleague, we sat over a coffee, and we just I had to work hard to basically sincerely rebuild the trust there. Two lessons right there. One is good ideas can come from anyone, inside or outside the room, experienced or new.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
Yeah. So as a leader, I basically keep an open mind, listen, do what is right, not what's convenient. And in the heat of the moment, it's difficult to do that because the fear of failure grips you. And like, no way. After all the thought we have put in, gung-ho about it, aligned, everybody's good to go. We execution has been like to the letter, everything has gone well. Now you're telling me that somehow this data is not good and it's not worked out. So the other lesson is it's okay for ideas to fail. And I learned it when real time, when I explained the outcome of the field trial to our VP back then over a cup of coffee. I gave her the background, the whole scoop, took ownership, because and all that. So to my surprise, actually, she shared a story back of a major failure in her career and how that was okay. So her support, her encouragement, her leadership really helped drive that message home. It's like ideas fail all the time.
Yeah.
What we really need to do as leaders is basically create that safe space, that psychological safety that is necessary to empower people to try those new ideas, without fear of conflict. And that's where that innovation culture kind of comes in.
Yeah. I think a quote I read once. They said, like, instead of saying, "Did you win or did you lose?" you said, "Did you win or did you learn?" Right? Because it's like you always learn in the failures, and it happens all the time. And sometimes you can pivot and get out of it, and sometimes you can't. But it always informs what happens next. So I think they're extremely useful, and especially if you did lose a lot of money. I was like, this is $1 million lesson, right, or a $5 million lesson, and what not to do next time, right?
Exactly.
But so if you are in an organization that does have that sort of fear of failure in the upper echelons, how can you work to help change that?
Yeah. So it's the key, at least for our innovation journey, has been creating clarity around what are some of the behaviors necessary to promote a culture of innovation. It's not so much. It's two things. One is you need skills. So in order to be creative, and you need to get that bench, of people, hire those right type of people who are creative, who are innovative, and who basically have the skills to do that as well. The other is basically the behaviors that are necessary to promote a culture of innovation. So we recognize that there are some people who are better at coming up with ideas. Others are better at basically converting those ideas into reality. And we need both. We need to recognize both. So when it comes to behaviors, we shifted our focus from individual to collaborative. We said that, hey, ideas compete people collaborate. And the expectation was that you bring forward ideas, confirm the value, make sure that the value proposition exists, test them collaboratively, and that may require multiple attempts. It's okay if the idea doesn't work out. So there's a part of it that is about what are the expectations from the staff, right? Which is, hey, make sure that you try it out multiple times. If you have setbacks, that's okay. It's okay if the idea eventually doesn't work out, but maintain that focus on safety. Again, goes back to the critical aspect of the business. So what innovation is not is blameworthy risk taking, attempting to make changes that jeopardize the operations integrity, cutting corners, taking shortcuts, skipping due diligence, stuff like that. And then not pivoting or stopping, like we talked about earlier, when the idea does not work out. So now this alone was not sufficient to help overcome the fear of failure, because we had to recognize and support ideas that didn't necessarily work out. And that brings me to what are the expectations from management? Because there is an expectation from leadership that we need to provide support from management to ideas that are core, adjacent, transformational, where we support visible support from leadership for failed ideas, celebrating them.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you definitely need that champion in the C-suite somewhere, at least more than one or more than one that can help, sort of grease the skids for that kind of stuff.
That's right.
Yeah.
So at our end, one of the things we started doing is, so we have a lab building, which is a standalone building on our campus, and we have a whole bunch of TV monitors on the lab building. So we started curating these innovation examples in one-pagers, and the supervisors, so the first-line managers started doing that, secure approval of the chain, etc. Hey, this is good to go. All that is fine. We did that. So we started basically putting these innovation examples in one-pagers, started spotlighting them on our TV monitors all over the lab. Innovation stories, big and small, everything. I mean, all of them got spotlighted. And the heroes were the lab professionals. So that got the momentum going. So the buzz around the lab was, it's okay to bring forward innovative ideas, whether it's big or small, whether it works out or not, doesn't matter. So the recognition part from management, from leadership was very important. That kind of set the stage. And I mean, it's amazing. So our PhD researchers, business partners, they would come over to the lab building for meetings and stuff like that. They would see all these innovation stories up on the TV monitors when they came over, and they were impressed, right? I mean, it's like they are a part of it because we're doing all this work for them. I mean, it's ties directly to the research that they are stewarding. But I mean, it is so simple, and yet that recognition basically just motivated everyone to kind of say, okay, I want to take it to the next level. How can I get into in the game? So suddenly everybody wanted their innovation story to be highlighted on the TV monitors, and it was now okay to fail. Like, it wasn't about the fear of failure anymore, right? It was more about, hey, how do I get that spotlight, and how do I bring forward my idea? So it was just a great way to share learnings. What are people working on in the lab? What's working well? What happens when an idea fails? What are some of the learnings? And people, there we go. Hey, nice try. It's okay, it didn't work out, but kudos to you for basically, going that extra mile to give it a shot, trying it out. So the collaboration aspect really went up, like visibility increased. And so we have had this going on for about a year now. And we recently did a survey in the lab, and overwhelmingly, people wanted their ideas to be spotlighted on TV monitors. They also wanted other forms of recognition, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But the TV monitors really moved the needle in a measurable way.
That's really cool. I mean, I found that, I've done all sorts of different recognition programs in all sorts of different innovation programs. And I find, recognition within the organization is sort of like the number one, right? People want to know that their ideas are heard, that their ideas are at least reviewed and looked at. And if they go somewhere, great. Even if they don't go anywhere, as long as they're, analyzed and they're heard. And if they go somewhere, then, as long as they know, the rest of the organization knows that they've contributed, then they're good. And it just continues that virtuous cycle of, oh, I know that this idea is going to go somewhere. And then somebody else hears that, oh, my coworker's idea went somewhere. Maybe I can put mine in there too. And it just keeps getting better and better. You want to stay away from that black hole where they submit something and then it goes nowhere, right? There's got to be a good communications process to keep the inventors pulling the providing the ideas. So that leads me to another question: is like you're saying that the lab provides ideas and the business partners provide ideas. Do you have sort of like some kind of a systemic way of gathering ideas from everybody in the organization?
Yes. So three basically partners involved in the entire process. One is the lab, and our focus is more the experimental aspect of the overall research program. And then there are the researchers. These are the folks who have the PhD degree, who are actually stewarding the entire research program. So there could be a modeling aspect associated with it. They are the ones who are looking at the value proposition. Is there a clear line of sight? What is the market size? How many years would it take to kind of develop the technology? So the discovery phase of the research doesn't necessarily start with us. It starts with the researchers. They are the ones who are more directly in touch with our business units, so they have that mandate. So initially, they are the ones who curate those ideas. And then the experimental, once we know that, hey, this is an opportunity that's worth pursuing, value proposition is clear, and we start noodling on the experimental aspect of it, and that is where all the fun begins for us.
Nice. So what form so it sounds like you do some proofs of concept. What forms do they normally take? I mean, do you go through a series of different type, like does it start as a DAC or as a spec and then eventually gets to a working prototype? I mean, what are the different forms that these things take?
Yeah. So for us, so this is hardware. Essentially, it's basically, we're all about experimentation. So for us, a proof of concept, and then all the way leading to of the validation, verification, and having something that is ready for deployment, etc. Product. It's all experimental. The way we start with it is, how we engage with our researchers, talking to them. To the business units and the researchers. And that was a fundamental cultural shift for us. So if there's a business need, for example, a new idea comes up, there are three things that we purposefully talk to us about. One is it desirable? Second, is it valuable? So is there a business value associated with it? And then third, is it feasible? Can we do it? Do we have the skills? Do we have the budget? Stuff like that. So in the past, our internal customers would be used with us, and we would directly jump from the business need, the pain point, to, hey, can we do this? Do we have the resources? Can we make this happen, etc. Question of value wouldn't necessarily come up. But now,
well, that's typical innovation groups, right? Because
it is.
At the point of inception of this concept, you don't know where you may not know which market or like where it's going. It might go. It's kind of like Odeo and Twitter, right? Like Twitter had no idea where Twitter was going when they invented Twitter. So, but then it exploded, right? So it's kind of the same. Like the classic innovation thing is that this is a great idea and we can do it, but we don't know if it's going to be a big hit or not, right? So you added that.
That's right. So we added that, and so going back to your original question regarding proof of concept. So we start with basically what is the simplest. So once the business need is there, come together, collaborate, talk, discuss, let the ideas compete, try out small things, small bets. It's all about small bets. Try out something on a small scale. And take that idea. So if you have something that you feel like, hey, I can make this happen. Let's talk a little bit about safety first. So don't rush into it. Don't just go and execute it. And that I don't mean by that months, etc. It's just a half an hour conversation with the team lead, with the manager. Have that conversation about safety. How are you going to execute that safely? And then go try that idea out. And that ideation, since it's experimental, it's not a code or it's not an app or something like that. Well, for us, the timeline maybe it's maybe a month of work or 3 months worth of work, or maybe even 6 months worth of work, depending on the complexity of the project or the opportunity. Go do that. More deliberate, more purposeful than we have in the past about doing that. Trying that out. Try the ideation out. Let people and be open to suggestions. So let subject matter experts weigh in. Let the researchers weigh in. Let the business unit come in, take a look at it, see if they are happy with it. It's very early stage. It's almost agile in that sense, in the sense that we are taking feedback even before we think we have even a feasible technology ready. So we do that, and if we have setbacks, that's okay. Keep people apprised. Try out in a couple of weeks, months. That could be 3 months. That could be 6 months. Could take longer depending on the complexity. But then at some point, you have to go back and report out on where is this going. No longer, just stretching and trying to stretch that research program out to try and do something that may or may not be feasible. So there's a timeline beyond which you have to go back, report out, and then there's a decision that is made about, are we going to pivot, stop, or continue the effort?
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds as if you're actually giving these ideas a lot of time to be able to be fleshed out. Because I know in a lot of other organizations, they want to churn it quickly, right? Because it's just a proof of concept, or it's just a deck, or it's just something that they can just get, throw it in front of a focus group and see what they say. But it sounds like you guys are a little more deliberate about it. You have the safety aspect, of course. There's no reason why you can't innovate safely. But at the same time, it sounds like you really are more deliberate about the process.
Right. Absolutely. The other deliberate part of it is the focus on value. So again, like I said earlier, right? In the past, we would simply ignore that value piece, jump from the business pull directly to feasibility. Now, we're responding to the business pull. We don't ignore it, but the conversation about the value happens much more deliberately and much more, organically as part of the engagement, early engagement with our customers in the discover phase of the research. So what's the business value? Where will it be used? Which asset? Do we think that in 5 years or 10 years down the road, we're still going to be active in this business space? Does it make sense? So we're a little bit more purposeful now than we have been in the past in terms of engagement with our internal customers and researchers. So know your customer. I mean, we talk about it in D school all the time.
Yeah.
The pain point. But that's hard, Chris. I mean, that's, in a large organization and in large corporations, it's not easy. It's very, I mean, in terms of it's not easy in terms of having that connection, having that strong engagement with the customers and researchers. It's really important to hold ourselves accountable to try ideas rapidly, we haven't been great about it in the past, but we are seeing a lot of improvement. A culture that allows pivots without risk of consequences is vital. We're working on that. Recognition that if we don't pivot or keep working on something that's not going to pan out, we're doing a huge disservice to the corporation. So, and that brings us back to, hey, what does our innovation portfolio look like? Is it balanced enough? Or are we spinning our wheels chasing stuff that may not, but just to keep ourselves busy?
Yeah, exactly. You're not just playing around with drones, right? Oh, this is fun.
That's right.
So you mentioned, so what about design thinking? Do you use it day to day in your organization?
So some of the ideas of design thinking, I think, are already in our innovation culture. I won't say that we explicitly take design thinking and kind of do it like as D school would teach us at Stanford. Not necessarily in that sense, because again, when you look at kind of design thinking, and when you look at the principles, etc., regarding users, the pain point, agile, lean, etc., a lot of that is basically best suited towards the stuff that Silicon Valley works on.
Yeah.
Can we implement it? Yes, but we have our own version of that we implement that works best and is more suited for in an industry like ours and a company like ours.
Yeah.
And its implementation is going to be different from company to company in oil and gas. We do it differently. Somebody else may do it differently.
Oh yeah, everybody does it differently. I mean, especially when it comes to agile. I remember I did work with Walmart at one point, and their idea of agile was very different from everybody else's idea of agile. So, like, not just within the organization, like within the industries, it's all different. But as long as you're taking steps towards being, I mean, it's all about being more receptive to your end users, right? I mean, we used to do things, in a monolithic way and go, okay, this is what you're going to get. That's it. And as long as that input gets brought in, at some
Right.
point, it's better than what you were doing before.
That's right. That's right.
Very
Absolutely.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. So it's time to think like a futurist. So it's the
Yeah.
year 2031. It's 10 years from now.
Yes.
Where will we be? I mean, where will you be? I mean, where will your organization be? I'm curious to know where you think you're going to be in 10 years.
Yeah. Um, so if you look at the oil and gas industry, 10 years ago, who would have thought that hydraulic fracturing would transform the industry the way it did? I mean, it has been the most disruptive technology that the energy industry has seen in decades, right? I mean,
Yep.
The 80s to 90s, from where we were talking about.
Yeah, there's a disruptive innovation for you right there.
That's right. That's right. So it is. And so I think the industry will continue to change in the next decade or so, right? So, like I said, I think technology is the way. Innovation, therefore, is the key. Any large organization that is active in this space in our industry will have to look at a balanced innovation portfolio. Will have to be very, very deliberate about collaboration. Want to make sure that your customers, etc., you understand what they need and have that active dialogue. And there is a healthy risk tolerance that will continue to reinforce, build on, and continue to improve on. There's no such thing as enough. So area innovation, right? And I'm going to stay out of the obvious areas that we've already that are already out in the media, etc. But three or four that I would like to kind of highlight. One is well management, smart wells, automation, not just in terms of drilling and completing a well, but more in terms of extending the productive life of the well, maximizing value, doing that in an environmentally responsible way. See a lot of activity in that space. Materials and coatings, from the traditional steels or alloys, etc., that we see, advanced materials, nanomaterials, coatings, nano coatings, composite materials, polymers, and materials that can basically have a performance space specs that are high temperature, high pressure, combination of things like sour environments and things like that. There's huge innovation space there, opportunity there, that is yet, I believe, unexplored. And third, I think, is the one that I think the industry has already latched on, that we talk about all the time. It's all about automation, big data, data analytics, which is all about asset monitoring. How do we manage each asset? How do we manage production? Can we use data analytics to do predictive asset management, extending the asset life, things like that. So definitely, I think, in 10 years, the industry is going to look very, very different where we are today.
Yeah. So I'm interested in the automation part. I mean, where are you looking at sort of automating the actual finding of things, or just the operational piece? Is it due to safety issues, or what where are you bringing the automation in, and why?
Right. Yeah. So and you touched upon a few of them already, Chris. Is the safety. So where it doesn't make sense, or rather where it makes sense, we would like to make sure that we're able to keep the personnel safe and automate maybe an operation that is high risk. That could be out on the rig site during drilling, or during an activity which is development of the asset, etc. So that's one aspect of it. But the other one is that improving the efficiency of our processes. I mean, today we have processes where we tend to spend a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of resources, and we're doing them simply because we do not have a good way of automating them. So machine learning comes into. We don't have the rules for machine learning, for automation, to say, okay, this is the number of times that you need to perform this operation. And today we are doing that because that's the rule of thumb. That's what has worked in the past. Moving away from those rules of thumbs to something that is much more data-driven, something that is more based on the realities of that particular asset at that time for that complexity, and just deriving value out of it. Plus also reducing our footprint associated with that. So there's that aspect as well.
Well, I keep thinking that you're going to have these automated machines that are actually like burrowing into the ground and like finding stuff that we wouldn't be able to find because they're machines. I mean, they'd be able to find things that human beings aren't able to. I mean, obviously you guys have the most cutting edge technology on that front. I mean, do you see things like that, just like automated bots that go out and are able to do things that humans aren't able to?
Yeah, so not quite there yet.
Maybe 20 years, right?
Yeah. So yes, but who knows, right? Absolutely. I mean, at some point, maybe subsea, for example, that is already remote. I mean, we use ROVs all the time right now, where the personnel are there on the surface, and we have ROVs that go all the way down to the seafloor to maybe look at a wellhead or on some operations. It's more monitoring inspection at this time. But yes, absolutely. I mean, at the pace at which we are moving, at some point, I think we're going to see operations being done without any human intervention, where you have these ROVs and robotics and some of the Abyss kind of stuff that we talk the movie, where
Yep.
it's all done remotely, and you're actually performing some very complex development related or production related operations, maybe replacing a valve or replacing a pipe, section of a pipe, or doing interventions like that, or just in the process of like laying out pipelines, doing that remotely, and with just the ROVs and some of the other advanced machines and automation, stuff like that.
Very, very cool. Very, very cool.
Very cool.
So I guess that's all I have to. That's all my questions I have for you. This has been really, really interesting. I love hearing about what you're doing today and where you're going, and especially the pieces on bringing innovation into the organization. Do you have any like final thoughts on if anybody's out there who's struggling to try and help change their culture to be more innovative? Anything you can advise?
Yeah. So. First of all, Chris, thanks for the opportunity. Fun conversation, really enjoyed it, and it has been great. My final thoughts would be in terms of driving an innovation culture. I think first of all, recognize that change is possible, right? And it is possible. It's something that can be done, but what it requires is three things. Like I said, first is understanding what are some of the expectations from the staff, clearly laying it out, providing clarity around it. And then there's a piece that is associated with, responsibilities for management, leadership, etc. It's a two-way street. Got to do that. And third, I think, is understanding what the balanced portfolio needs to look like, and that's going to be different for different companies. It's going to vary from industry to industry, the core to adjacent to, and based on that, every company is going to have a different threshold for risk tolerance and a different threshold for how many ideas can fail versus can succeed.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I love that. I love that. I love that model, the transformative, adjacent, and core. That's really cool. Did you have something else, or?
No, I think that's
okay.
That's pretty much it. Chris,
all right.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. It has been
thanks so much.
Great.
This is great. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Yes, so send me an email or just give me a call, and I can provide you that information. So
okay, well, I'll set up I'll put all your information in the show notes. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, they can go through that. So thank you so much. This has been great.
Yeah, Chris, thank you so much, and have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye.